Okay, hi everybody. We are live on Facebook. This is John with Murder by the Book, and I'm super excited tonight that we have Daryl Gerber with us and Abby Collette to talk about their new books. Let me get my right screen pulled up here. So Wall Street Journal bestselling author Abby Collette loves a good mystery. Born and raised in Cleveland, it's even a mystery to her why she hasn't yet come to a warmer place. Author of the two Southern Cozy Mystery series, the Logan Dickerson Mysteries and the Romaine Wilder Mysteries, she spends her time writing, facilitating writing workshops at local libraries, and spending time with her grandchildren, each of which are her favorite. Agatha Award-winning Daryl Gerber writes the French Bistro Mysteries, as well as the nationally best-selling Cookbook Nook Mysteries as Avery Ames. She pens the popular Cheese Shop Mysteries. She also writes standalone suspense, which includes the titles Day of Secrets, Girl on the Run, and a fun tidbit: as an actress, she appeared in Murder, She Wrote. She loves to cook, and she has a frisky golden doodle named Sparky who keeps her in line. So how are y'all doing tonight?
Doing great, thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm so excited to do this. I was telling you beforehand, I'm the resident cozy reader at the bookstore, and I'm so excited that we're, as doing these Zoom things, we get to chat with authors that don't necessarily always make it out. I know, Daryl, we had you scheduled next month for a book signing, so I'm glad that we were able to do this. So Abby's book, A Deadly Inside Scoop, is out now and has been out for about a month-ish. And Daryl's A Sprinkling of Murder actually comes out next Tuesday. So we're getting a sneak peek at it. So real easy question just to start off. Can you guys tell us kind of the elevator pitch for your books? We'll start with you, Abby.
Oh, I don't know.
It could be longer than an elevator pitch. It doesn't have to be an elevator pitch.
Thank you. Well, my book is about a girl. She has an MBA and worked in New York, did the big city kind of job, and realized she was homesick. She didn't have a broken heart. She didn't lose her job. She just was used to being around family. And her family owns a ice cream shop. It's a generational thing. Her grandparents started it back in the 60s, and it's always been in the family and ran by the family. So of course there's going to be ice cream and murder in every book, but that's the gist of it.
Right, and you, Daryl?
Well, this is a brand new series. It's called the Fairy Garden Mystery Series, and it stars Courtney Kelley. Courtney she was a landscaper working in her father's company in Carmel by the Sea, California, a real town. This is a first for me because I've been writing fictional towns all this time, but I set it in Carmel. And Courtney, when she was a girl, she did believe and see a fairy. But when her mother died, she lost that ability. And she's been nose to the grindstone all this time, working for her dad, doing the right thing, loves gardening, but she decided to take a leap of faith and open her own shop when her Nana left her some money in Carmel, where her dad works. And it's called Open Your Imagination. And it's a fairy garden store. And when she opens the shop, a fairy comes to her.
So before I forget, if you guys are watching on Facebook, if you have questions for either author, drop them in the comments below. McKenna is kind of scouring them. She will feed them to me. So once I am done chatting with the ladies, we will have some time to get to your questions too. So definitely drop them in there. So kind of talking about cozy mysteries, for any of our viewers that aren't familiar with what a cozy mystery is, what are cozy mysteries to y'all? We'll start with you this time, Daryl.
Cozy mysteries. Cozy mysteries are the kind of book that you can wrap yourself in a chair and read it and not feel like you're going. They usually end with happy ever after. Often they are an amateur sleuth. Sometimes they're a detective, but most often they're an amateur sleuth. Usually there's not a lot of blood, guts, and gore on the page. Usually there's not a lot of bad language in the book. And they usually involve a close set of characters. If you think of Agatha Christie, that was the original cozy mystery, where you had a small set of characters and the amateur sleuth, or in her case, she had a detective as well as amateur sleuths. They go and they solve the crime with the basic clues that they can get, but it's a comfort read, and it does not have the same kind of darkness that you might find in thrillers and suspense.
And Abby, do you have anything to add?
I totally agree with that. I get that question a lot. People don't know what a cozy mystery is. And I think that a great way to describe it, it's an idyllic place with great neighbors. People look out for each other, and it's a place you'd want to live, all except for the murder. So
Yeah.
the ones that keep happening over and over.
Over and over and over again.
And
Right.
yeah, one of the things that I love about cozies as a genre and the whole, Daryl, you kind of mentioned it, is kind of that closed cast of characters, and there's such a sense of community in all of the books. Whether it's like in Abby's case, there's her friends, but there's also like the family unit in the books. Or if people don't, like a lot of times, like Daryl, you mentioned in your book, like the character's mom died really early. A lot of times if that's an issue, like they always find kind of this found family around them, groups of friends that they've known for years in this town that kind of really rally around them. And you said it's just something that you can kind of wrap yourself in,
Right.
which I think is one of the reasons why we're seeing so many people turn to cozy mysteries right now. We're seeing cozy mysteries and classics. Like that's kind of what people want to read, or those comfort reads.
Interesting. During this time of the pandemic, you're saying, yeah, that makes sense. You know, the dark, we have a lot of dark in the world right now. And it's nice to be able to just go someplace and have a friend. You know, you read these books and it's like, oh, you're part of their world. You know, you get to know them, you get to know their friends, why they like them. You get to find out that they're, in our cases, we probably have very strong women, you know, but they really find their extended family no matter what it is. Yeah.
It's amazing that the way that they're pulled in, even though they're reading about a murder or someone died, they're pulled in. I get a lot of people telling me, you know, they love the family aspect to the story and the closeness, and that's what you get. And I think that always comes through in cozies, how close knit the community is and the people are. So that's a good thing. And like Daryl, this was the first time that I wrote in a real place. Chagrin Falls is actually a real place, and it's small. It's an older place, older city from like the mid 1800s. I think that it was formed. And so there's a lot of history there, and a lot of people that grew up there and then raised their children there. So that's kind of the feel that I wanted to give to the book.
So for both of you then, what are some of the challenges of writing about a place that exists already versus kind of just being able to make up your small town on your own?
Well, so for me, I got my map. I grew up in California and I went to Carmel by the Sea a lot. And Carmel is a very small community. It's just a few streets and everything else. And it's made up, one of its history things, because it was sort of founded after the 1906 earthquake in San Francisco. A lot of artists and authors went down. A bohemian kind of village is what they wanted to create, a very supportive community. And so it's very specific streets, and it doesn't extend past that. Then it becomes houses. And I created my own 2 courtyards. So I did create fictional little places in Carmel. And so somebody who knows Carmel is going to say, I don't know that courtyard, but I created that. And then I have to stick to, this is the thing that's interesting. You have to know if you're going on 7th this way or 8th this way. Are you crossing on this street, Lincoln here? Does this happen over on Dolores? And so you have to really know, I have to consult my map a lot, because there's a lot of walking in this town, bicycle riding. It's not driving in cars. So you get to places by via foot. You have to make sure that the person who's reading it is saying, oh yeah, especially if they've been to Carmel.
I think that's the biggest problem. People will get you, they will catch you on if you get something wrong in the place that you're writing about. So that's why it's easy. You know, my other 2 cozy mystery series, one was set in Texas and one in Georgia, but I made up the town. So it was easy. I could put them anywhere. I have them do anything. I did make one mistake in the book, and I said that driving down one highway, you could see the Savannah River, and someone checked me on that. So, you have to be really careful. And that's the thing about writing. I worry still. I haven't heard from anyone from Chagrin Falls yet, but I worry still, that I got it right. I hope I got it right. I did also add a couple things, but I went there, I took my grandchildren, and there's actually a place you can buy ice cream. It's a popcorn shop in the place where my story is. I kind of just hijacked an actual place and put my people in, my characters in. So I took my grandchildren and we walked around and we ate ice cream and we really got the feel of it. And everyone was so nice and told me, go to the town center, go to the visitor center, very helpful. So I think that's the hard part. The easy part is when you do it someplace, it's fun, it's really fun to do and to describe that place and how you felt about it when you were there. So I like that part of it.
So one of the things that I'm always curious about with cozies is, the hook is such an important part of it, whether it's a fairy garden mystery or it's an ice cream. So where does the hook come in the writing process? Is it something that you start with? Is it something that maybe you were interested in already, or is it something that you want to learn about? So that's why you kind of use that for the book.
Okay. So fairy gardens, I fell in love with fairy gardens when I went to a Renaissance fair. And there was this woman making them. And I used to garden big time, but the shoulders, the elbows, everything goes out. So, I'm looking at these beautiful little fairy gardens and think of it as like doll housing for your garden. And you get these little characters sort of talking and communicating. And so in each little fairy garden, there's a story that I've made up in my head. And so I thought, gee, wouldn't this make a cute, idea for a series? Now it's a little paranormal because of the fairy. And I don't write that. And so it was a little nerve-wracking to say. And my agent said, I don't know, I don't think I'm going to be able to sell this. And then he sent it to my publisher and she bought it right away. So she must like fairies too, I guess.
Well, actually, I never got the idea or the concept of a hook. I would just come up with things. And I did something with Kate Carlisle last week or something, and she gave a definition for it. And I was like, a light bulb went off. I go, oh, that's why I couldn't sell this book or that book, because you got to have that hook. So you have to think about it in a different way. It's so for me, it was hard at first because I didn't quite grasp the concept of a hook. But I think once you know what it is, then your thinking kind of goes around that point. You need something that your main character is going to do, whether it's making quilts, knitting, cooking, gardening, or whatever it is. And that's your hook. And then you just build, I think it's easy then to build a story around there. Usually when I write a story, I just need the victim, the killer, and their names, the suspects' names and their names. And I'm good to go. Now, I got to throw in the hook. But once you come up with that. So my hook was the ice cream, and that was an easy sale. That turned out to be a really easy sale for people like that right away. Their only problem was because I'm in Cleveland with all the snow, and the first day she reopens the ice cream shop after a remodel, it snows. And that happens in Cleveland. I always say, if you don't like the weather, just wait a minute, it'll change. So she has this big snowstorm that comes. And so when I tried to sell this hook, to publishers, they were like, will it be a viable business? Ice cream in the snow. I had to tell them we have ice cream shops everywhere in Cleveland. It's always a line out the door. Doesn't matter. We're used to snow and the cold. So.
Yeah, that thing about hook, because Kate has it down to a science. And a hook, I didn't understand what a hook was either. I would write a book and they'd say, gee, I really like your writing, but I can't sell this. And when I finally started to understand, my friend Krista Davis taught me what a hook was. And when I finally got that, it was so much easier to pitch the story because the readers are really looking for something that they can wrap their head around. And if they know that they like knitting or they like crafting or they like such and such, they're going to warm to that story because the hook, the theme of the story is what they first go to, and then they stay because of the characters.
Yeah, and that's sort of the way that we sell them too. We're like, here's this great ice cream shop, or here's this fairy garden mystery. But I think the thing that kind of really works and I think you guys do this really well, is like, Abby, you use the hook, but it's also this way for her to relate to her family. And you kind of get those ties there. And Daryl, you do that too, where like, these fairy gardens are kind of this tie back to her childhood and being able to see fairies again. And it's a really great way, I think, to kind of humanize the characters and bring kind of that extra emotional depth to them when they're done well.
Thank you.
So what kind of research then do you do, and how do you try to figure out how like how much of the hook do you put in there, how much not? I imagine for you, Abby, doing research to figure out ice cream was probably a lot of fun.
It was so much fun. Even my granddaughter, the youngest one, she's maybe 7 or 8 at the time. She says, "Grammy, we're spending so much money on ice cream." She she even thought maybe we shouldn't go as far as we went, but we needed the research to find out how it goes. So I do a lot of research. I always say I mix fact with fiction. I like to put a lot of facts into my story and, build the story around true things. So I do a lot of research, it wasn't just, the ice cream, but the city, how to make ice cream, sure, and business things. So I look that up before I decide the story. I always give my character, all of my characters are well educated. My main characters, they have PhDs or masters or something. And so that goes a lot into their personality that I have to build up. So there's a lot of research that way too, like what kind of degree would they need to do certain things and what school could they get that from? I go even that far, and I look up, does that college actually offer something in that field before I say that person went to that school. So I like doing research.
I do the same thing when it comes to that. You can't have an agricultural, degree if it's not offered at the school. So I will do the same kind of thing as look up and say, okay, what classes could she take? What classes did she need to take? Could she have taken this in 4 years or 6 years? I do the same thing.
So one of the things that I loved about A Deadly Inside Scoop, Abby, you kind of mentioned this already, is, a lot of times when a cozy starts, the character has just gotten out of a relationship. She's just been fired from her job. There's usually some kind of underlying trauma or reason that she's fled back to her hometown. But with yours, like you said, she just, wanted to be closer to her family again. And I think, Daryl, even with yours, she just, she's come to this money and she wants to achieve this dream that she's had for a while. So why do you think that a lot of cozies kind of start with that kind of hard reset for a woman's life before she kind of goes back to her small town?
I think that it's starting to, I think it's a formula that cozies are, as Daryl mentioned earlier, it's the not too much gore on screen, sex, the violence and things aren't in the book. And it was kind of a set, not necessarily in stone, but a set pattern of how things went. But I think that a lot of books now are kind of changing that around. Instead of the main character being an older person, 40s or 50s, cozy mystery publishers are looking for younger people. They're trying to appeal to like millennials and things. And so I think it's starting to take a turn to not necessarily those things. And if you go in chat rooms on Facebook and things, people are saying they like to see something different. They liked when it wasn't because of a broken heart, a broken engagement, or whatever, losing their job. So I think that cozy mysteries, don't, be upset. I don't think it's going to change where it's not that same fun kind of read. And I don't think it'll lose the aspect of a hook, different crafts or books, librarians, things that people like. But I do think that it'll be maybe modernized. And, women today they're not so devastated by a broken heart. It still hurts, but, a lot of times you're not going to go home, to see about it. You'll eat ice cream with your girlfriend. You guys will, hang out or whatever. So I think maybe it'll be a little change like that in the story. And I think that's maybe what we're seeing now.
Well, I think you're right. In my cheese shop mysteries, when I wrote those, I was told that they were surprised that Charlotte actually came from the town and had never left the town, and she didn't have a broken heart. Now, she had a little bit of a broken heart, but truthfully, Crepe Chef didn't deserve her anyway. He was a crepe chef, so we didn't care about him. But it was interesting that in the cookbook Nook mysteries, I did bring her home from San Francisco. She'd lost her husband in a tragic accident, and she'd lost her smile, and she needed to sort of reset. It wasn't that big a move. It was just down the coast. But she was tired of her job. So that was that. In this one, in the Fairy Garden Mysteries, I wanted that same thing. I wanted her to be in the town where she wanted to be. This was just a reset on finding your dream. And, you know, sometimes you get stuck in a rut because you think you have to do this. And she didn't want to get stuck in that rut, and to open your imagination, which she called her shop. It was really important for me to write that for my readers. I wanted my readers to know that they could dream, and it didn't take a lot of money. It took the dream to find the spot, to get the lease going, to get a little bit of investment to start a company. I think that a lot of women are looking to do that right now. Not just women and men, readers, you know, are looking to say, what can I do now? I mean, 20 million people out of work. There are some people saying, what can I do from home? And I think those dreams are important. So I think cozy mysteries can start to fill that little, you know, avenue too.
I think that's a great way to put it. Stuck in a rut, you know, people are all about finding their passion. You know, I want to work in my passion. So that's a great way to put it, I think. And I think that's the way of the cozy mysteries. You know, people are finding their passions, which they kind of did all the time, because we had the knitters and the quilters.
Right.
You know, that was their passion. Books are their passion, bookstores. And I think it's just being brought out more, which is a good thing. You know, people aren't so they're not so inclined to want to do the 9 to 5. There's so many entrepreneurs, people that want to do the things, you know, for their livelihood that they like to do. So
right.
I agree.
And that's one of the things that I don't think that the genre kind of as a whole gets credit for, because I mean, these stories really are kind of, for the most part, I can only think of maybe a handful of them that have men as male characters, as opposed to kind of the police procedurals and stuff that we're used to seeing. But so much of the genre is about kind of women, and now, as Abby mentioned, kind of younger women really kind of reclaiming their lives as their own, like you said, getting to follow their dreams and kind of really kind of harnessing their own like kind of power and their own dreams and kind of getting to do what they want to. And I think that people are starting to realize that about the genre, and I think it's a really wonderful thing, and it's a really great way to get people to kind of pick up the books too.
Right, exactly right. Yeah, because they're hopeful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, yes, we've got murder, but these are hopeful characters. Most of them are not sad sacks. Most of them are not going around, you know, flailing their back going, oh, poor me, oh, poor me. They're trying to find a way to solve problems, and they're problem solvers. I love that about these characters.
I agree.
So kind of going with the problem solving, kind of one of the aspects of the genre, like y'all mentioned, is that they're generally kind of amateur sleuths. They're usually kind of women that are going about their you know, everyday normal lives, and they happen to, you know, stumble across a body, or, you know, slide down a snowbank and find a body when they're trying to look for snow to make ice cream. So what are some of the challenges of trying to solve a mystery or a murder when you're not necessarily kind of connected to the police or working with the police and involved in an actual like investigation like that?
Well, so my sleuths are usually reluctant sleuths, because it's not many people that want to get involved in solving a mystery. But I usually put some counterpart there that's all gung-ho about finding out what to do. In A Daily Inside Scoop, it's Maisie, and she watches Acorn TV. So all she does is think about, we can solve this. And Lynn is like, I have a business to run, you know, I don't have time to go around solving murders. That's what the police are for. And I made sure that the police wasn't, you know, bumbling idiots, because they're not, you know. So the hard part for me in doing a mystery are the clues. Sometimes I do it like I used to do math problems. You know, I look in the back of the book, find the answer, and work backwards if I didn't know how to solve the problem. And sometimes that's how I write. I put all the clues they found, and then I think, oh yeah, they have to know this. And then I go back to the book. I try to do it from the beginning back, but it doesn't always work. So that's what I do. I'll write the last chapter sometimes and say, and we found out this because of that. So that's the hard part for me, is clues. Not so much the red herrings. Those kind of pop up on their own, because, you know, you go and I know that person isn't the killer when they go to interrogate or snoop with that person. So it's okay. It's easier to give them a red herring and, you know, steer them that way. But it's hard. You don't want for people to figure out who the killer is early on. You want them to be surprised. So the clues have to be, you know, tucked in there, but well enough so sort of like a Sixth Sense movie kind of moment. Oh, that's what that was, or that's why that happened. So I think that's the harder part for me. And sometimes dragging my main character in. I get that a lot. You know, like, she didn't want to solve the murder. No, who wants to go and solve a murder? You know, so I have to, you know, bring her around to it some kind of way for her to actually get involved. And in the first book, it was her father, and she's very close to her father. And so she doesn't want, he's a well-known orthopedic surgeon at the major hospital there, and she just doesn't want his name dragged into, you know, this. So she decides she's going to help. She initially tries, though, to talk to the detective to reason with them. It's like, my father could never, you know, do this. And he says, well, I follow the clues. So
yeah, you know, on that note, that's the main thing I try to do, John, and that is that I want my character to care about either the victim or care about the suspect, whether it's herself or whether it's somebody she loves, because that's what keeps an amateur sleuth continually being interested in it, and why they have some stake in what's it called, skin in the game. You know, is that if it's just your next door neighbor and you don't even like that person, then why are you trying to help them? You know, so it really has to be somebody she cares about, whether it's her father, whether it's her mother, whether it's herself, whether the victim is someone that she absolutely loved and adored and who could do this kind of thing. So that skin in the game matters to me. And that's where I do what you do, Abby. I start with I've got my suspect. I've got my victim. I've got my about 5 suspects, including whoever the main person is that we need to exonerate. And I work from there. I look at the motives and the alibis and the lies that they're doing. What are the secrets they're hiding? Plant those all into my story. And I also work backwards. I love writing the last chapter. I do. I want to know what happens so I can move backwards and get it all fitted in there.
And that's funny. That's exactly how many suspects. I always figure for 5 suspects. Even if I don't use them all, I know who they are. And I try to put those all in the story. Maybe that's just like the number for suspects, because
some people work with 3, but I really like 5. I think it makes a more complex story, and you know, you get to 3, I can figure it out by page 75. So I better have a few more. You know?
Exactly.
So for pleasure reading, do you guys read kind of in the mystery genre? Do you read cozies? Or are you like the opposite end, reading like as bloody as you can? Where do you fall in the kind of the reading?
I like to stay in the genre. But I love reading thrillers, but I don't like reading as bloody as possible. I don't like reading about cobwebs and spiders crawling all over the body. That just doesn't work for me. So I read a lot of cozies. I read definitely a lot of cozies. But I like to read, and I've got almost 3 projects going at a time. I'm working on my own. I'm listening to an audiobook every day now. And I set at 7 o'clock at night to read whatever I'm reading. And so last week it was a cozy. This week it's a thriller. Next week it'll probably be a cozy again. So I keep it shuffling up. And then there's research, of course.
I read cozies. And then sometimes I get the notion that I'm going to write something different. So I'll read a book or 2 from that, but mostly no, I stick with cozies. I started out self-publishing, and I self-published about 25 books.
Oh,
wow. So when I came over to traditionally published books, I had to kind of change, because at that time I only read self-published authors, you know, their books, cozy mysteries. And so I'm switching over. So I'm really catching up. You know, even though I've been writing cozies, I tried my hand at a Dan Brownish kind of book. That's my first series, but there was no swearing, because I don't cuss, so I don't, you know, write that into my story. There was no murder, and people were like, okay, so what's going on here? There's no action. And I thought, I need to write something with no action. So cozy was perfect for me. So that's kind of pretty much what I stick to. But I'm playing catch up, because I read for so many years self-published cozy authors. Mm-hmm. And some of them are like me, hybrid. They do both, but for the most part I didn't. So I'm catching up with a few series. Like I just read Shredding the Evidence by Daryl. So that was good. And then I got A Sprinkling of Murder through Netflix. So NetGalley. So I got a preview of that. And then I have an event last week. So I read that author. And this next week I have some. So
good.
I'm catching up. Yeah.
One of my other favorite things about cozies is they're really good. Like whenever I feel like I'm in a rut, because I have to read kind of across the board for the store stuff too, historical, some thriller stuff like that. But whenever I feel like I'm just kind of in a rut and I don't know what it is I want to read next, I will pick up a cozy and I will immediately be immersed in it. And there are just these really great, just kind of palate cleansers that just kind of refresh you. And you're like, okay, like this scratched this itch. I'm happy with the world again. I can pick something else up and go. And it's always great to find a nice long series that you can kind of binge through as well. So Abby, you mentioned this, that you had done a lot of self-published stuff that you did under a different name, and Daryl, you've written under different names. So can you guys talk a little bit about kind of writing under pseudonyms and making the decision to change pseudonyms?
Well, I started as Avery Ames. I got to work for hire through Berkeley, and that was the cheddar cheese shop, the cheese shop mystery series. And that was my big break because interestingly enough, Abby, I was writing suspense before that. And when I finally switched over into cozy, and that's when I got picked up. But it was a one-off. That was just one series. It had 7 books in it. And when they ended that series, in the middle of that, I pitched them a new series, the Cookbook Nook Mysteries. And I went to my real name, what everybody calls me, which is Daryl. And from that point on, then I just wrote under my own name. It is very difficult to get people to, number one, it's difficult to get people to understand that you're 2 people and to look for your other name when they're looking for this one. And it doesn't matter. It's all over my Facebook. It's all over my website. It doesn't, they still go, oh, and you're Avery? It's like, yeah, she looks just like me. And the other thing that I find difficult is I do write suspense. And to get people that read my cozies to read my suspense, by the way, my suspense has no bad language in it, very little sex on the page. Oh, that's something we didn't add in the cozies earlier. And not a lot of blood, guts, and gore, but yes, there's some, there's blood, there's the murder's a little harsher. But it's interesting, I can't get my cozy readers to really just jump in there saying, yes, I'll read a suspense as well. So there are difficulties with that, but the hardest thing was to get people to understand that I'm 2 people and they look exactly the same.
I worried about that when I had to use a different name for a Daily Inside Scoop. Abby isn't my real name at all anyway. So, and Vandiver is actually my maiden name, and Collette is actually my real middle name. So for both names, I took a real part of me, not my name. And when I switched over to Abby Collette, I worried about that, as Daryl was saying, that people wouldn't know it was me, although I kept Abby. So what I did was I just say, my little catch line is just call me Abby. And that way, that's who I am. For a website, I did an Abby Vandiver and an Abby Collette and an author Abby, and I had everything go funnel to that one. So whatever you typed in, it went to that. Because I was worried. I thought, I have like all these followers and email subscribers, and they won't know it's me. Although Abby isn't me really, but they won't know it's me. And I really worried about that. And I've been thinking about writing a women's fiction book. And I thought, I don't want to be Abby because those are completely different genres and things that you're writing about. And you don't want to lose. Cozy readers are cozy readers for a reason. Yeah. They don't like all of that other stuff, They just want to nestle in, as Daryl say, cozy up and read a good book and smile all the way through, and enjoy it. And they don't want to be jarred out of that by the other things that can be put on pages from other genres. So now I'm wrestling with, if I do write another story, who will I be? Sort of like earlier when I said, where am I?
Yeah, it's just, one of the things that Jen McKinley said to me, she said, I want the most real estate in a bookstore that I can find. So I want all of my books at least on the same shelf. And so she said everything should at least start with McKinley. If she was going to change her names, change the first name, but keep the last so that everything is there. And I didn't do that with Avery Ames, and I'm sorry, but Avery Ames was the first on the list. So it got first in the libraries, first in the bookstores, and people saw the name, and it was first at conferences, and so people knew who I was. It was hard once I had to move them over into the G's.
Yeah,
that's a very good point. That's a good
yeah.
point. Jan is so smart. I love her.
Yes, she is.
She did my blurb on the front of my book. So
yes, she did.
So one of the first things we always do when we get cozies, if it's the first in a series, almost every employee, the first thing we do is, oh, I don't recognize this name. We flip to the copyright page, say, is this person really somebody else? Who is this person really? But I will say, with the name stuff, Abby, like Juliet Blackwell and Jen McKinley actually have both released some women's fiction stuff, and they've kept it under their name.
Kept their names, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I'm really excited. Paige Shelton has started a new series set in Alaska. The first one's called Thin Ice. And they're sort of kind of cozy thrillers. It's a thriller, but I mean, they drop a couple of F-bombs here or there, but it's a thriller, but it's not kind of dark, and there's some suspense, but it kind of bridges that. Like if her cozy readers picked it up, I think that it doesn't push them so out of the kind of their cozy wheelhouse to be like, oh my gosh, what is this? So be interesting to see.
That's on my TBR. I'm looking to read that one, Thin Ice. Yeah, I've seen it a lot. So I'm one to read reviews. I always read the reviews on books. I usually start with the ones and read up. And so, but
never
it sounds
read the
really
ones.
interesting.
I think runs are spiteful people. I will not read a one review.
They are spiteful people. I agree. Sometimes they're trolls. When I first started self-publishing, I had one. I don't care what I wrote. They came and gave me a 1, and I even co-wrote the book, and they wrote in the review, I like the one author a lot, but I don't like Abby, so I'm giving the whole thing a 1, So, but I think that you learn too. I'm like research. I'm a lifelong learner. I went to school practically half of my life, and then now I learn through Google, which my son says you can't trust Google, but I Google everything. If I'm watching a movie or writing a book or whatever I'm doing, as soon as someone says something I don't know about, I'm Googling it at the same time. So it's good to read to find out what's going on in the genre. And so I like that idea, that page, the Thin Ice book. So I'm going to definitely read that book.
It's totally different for me because obviously I'm not an author and not putting product out there, but I love reading 1-star reviews of stuff because you're just like, a lot of times you're like, what is wrong with these people? Like,
okay. All right. So speaking of Juliet Blackwell, who I absolutely adore, and her French series, her fiction is just
so good. Yeah.
So good. And I can't wait to read Jen's, but speaking of 1-star reviews, so there was a series of 1-star reviews that went through. Juliet Blackwell writes much better than this. That was the 1-star. And we wrote Juliet and we went, is your mother leaving 1-star reviews? It was so funny. There was a string of them. And I was like, who's doing this? It was hysterical.
Yeah, she's one of my favorite people. We're hoping to maybe pair her up with Victoria Laurie later in the fall when Victoria.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
So I've got a couple of questions from the crowd. Daryl, Gail wants to know if you can talk a little bit about your Murder, She Wrote experience.
Oh, okay. So I was an actress before I was a writer, and I was lucky enough to have a co-starring role on Murder, She Wrote. I had very dark hair. I was a very mean, my original dark hair. I was a very mean neighbor, and I had a lovely scene with Angela Lansbury as Jessica Fletcher. It was a lot of fun. And as an actress, I was really trying to move my career forward. And then we actually moved to Florida for my husband's career. And so I put my acting aside and I focused on my writing, but I had an absolute blast on Murder, She Wrote. And I will tell you, Angela Lansbury is one of the classiest women in the entire world.
You can tell that just from the way she carries herself. So have you ever thought about I have a question. Have you ever thought about putting an actor, in a book? That is such a great history that you have with that.
You mean as a lead character or something?
Yeah.
I put a theater in my cheese shop mysteries. And so every cheese shop mystery, the mayor of the town, who was Grandmère also put on shows. And so I had a lot of fun mixing up and having fun, playing with the shows that they did in the cheese shop mysteries.
That sounds fun. I'll have to pick that series up next.
So speaking of Cabot Cove, how do you keep from everyone in a small town ending up dead? Do you have any techniques that you use to avoid the Cabot Cove syndrome?
No.
You have to do like Jessica Fletcher and fly around the world and find dead bodies.
That would be the way, but your publisher's not going to let you do that. Your
they don't want you to leave.
Town.
Yeah.
No,
so, it's hard.
Yeah. The Cabot Cove syndrome. You're either a victim or you're a suspect.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and I guess, kind of if you're kind of cozy readers are very loyal and they read very strongly in the genre. So I guess you kind of avoid some of that because people just know these small towns are going to be like murder capitals, but nobody ever notices it.
You suspend belief, disbelief. You do.
Right. And I wrote in the first book in Daily Inside Scoop that Chagrin Falls actually has a crime rate. It's like 82%. I got this from Wikipedia. 82% safer than any other city in the United States. But of course, I'm going to turn those statistics
You're going to change that.
Yeah. You got that 18% wiggle room there for it.
Well, I talked to the chief of police in Carmel, and I said, so, when was the last time you had a murder? And he goes, we haven't. I mean, it's like 14, 15 years or something. I said, well, yeah, that's going to change in my book. So sorry.
At least one a year, right?
Yeah.
Right. So one of the things that you see in cozies are you either have kind of the murder by the end of the first or second chapter, or people will give you kind of 70 or 80 pages to kind of get to know a character before they're bumped off. Where do you guys fall on that spectrum?
I like to kill them early, kill them quick. But the third book, when I was writing the third book in the series, she just would not die. And I was like on chapter 4, and she was just as happy, bouncing around the murder victim. And I remember I was speaking somewhere, and we were talking about me writing this, and I thought, oh my God, I can't kill her. She just, won't go. But I like to do it, although it doesn't work out all the time. And I guess in this book it didn't. I've got reviews on that. I like to kill them second chapter at least, or the third.
Yeah, I like by the end of the third or fourth chapter. I read some books where the body didn't fall till 100 pages, and it's like, whoa, it's a long time for that person to be you're not doing any sleuthing then if you aren't doing that. So the faster you can get into the sleuthing, but I really do want you to either like or hate the character that's going to die. So you do have to get them introduced. You can't. In my suspense, though, this was interesting. I was talking about this earlier on a podcast. The body is on the first page. And then the book is about getting to know her better through the eyes of the protagonist because they were best friends. So that's a different thing. The body drops early in a suspense, but I think a cozy, you have to warm up your readers just a little bit.
I think that too, when I write self-published books, self-published, I can kill them earlier. I noticed that in traditional, I didn't notice, I was told. In traditionally published books, they want you to introduce the victim alive. So that gives you, a little more space that you have to put in before a body shows up, because you have to introduce that character. And my self-published books, they just turn them dead. Usually they bounce in and they die without any pomp or circumstance. You don't know anything about them. So I think that makes a difference too, when you have to introduce your victim and give them a few speaking parts before they actually.
So Tracy asks, P.D. James once said that there are only 4 motives for murder: love, lust, loathing, or lucre. Do either of you have any favorite motives for your cozies?
Just don't like them, just.
Well, I mean, some of my favorite are, vengeance or retribution. I do like that. Some are just because it's a really nasty person. They did something horrible, so they deserve to die. But I also kill good people. And then it's, why did that person die? And that's the motive that really gets you is, were they in love with somebody else? Did they rebuff somebody that wanted love? but you're falling right into those four things, love, lucre, lust, and what was the fourth?
Loathing.
And loathing, which is vengeance, hatred. Yeah, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
I've never heard that before, but that's
I like
pretty much covers. Yep, I like it too.
Yeah. So last question before we tune out for the night. What are you guys, kind of two-part, because I know they're not always the same thing. What are you working on right now, and what do you have coming out next?
I am working on that women's fiction that I'm thinking about writing. So I'm kind of reading some books for that. I'm also working on a new cozy series that I hope to come up with. And I've already written the second and third book in this series. But of course, edits will come back. So edits, you're always working on edits. So that's what I'm working on.
And you have a title for the second one already, don't you, Abby?
Yeah, actually the cover is out. I don't have a picture of it. It's called A Game of Cones. So
oh God, that's great.
Isn't that cute? I didn't think of it. I should start saying, because Penguin will never dispute it. I should say, oh yeah, and I thought of it.
That's real cute. That's a cute title.
And the cover is really cute too. It's got two cones that are, the ice cream is, toasting each other. So
that's cute. I've turned in the second in the Fairy Garden Mysteries. That won't come out till next year, though. I guess they come out once a year from Kensington. So in the meantime, the third Aspen Adams novel of suspense will come out in November. 2 came out last year, so that'll be the third in the trilogy. And I'm working on my outline for the 10th Cookbook Nook Mystery Series. I do work from outlines. So synopsis and outline is what I'm doing right now and working on the synopsis for the third, if they buy it, Fairy Garden Mystery.
And one thing that we didn't actually mention, I can't believe we didn't bring it up in our whole talk of cozies, is one of the hallmarks of the genre is they tend to have varying degrees of successful puns in the titles. Sometimes they're really great, like Game of Cones is great. Sometimes you see them and you're like, I don't quite get this. So they always have the best titles too.
Yes, they are. And I can never think of any. So
yeah,
I came up with all my cheese shop ones, and those were fun, for cheddar or worse, as Gouda is dead. Those were fun to do. Yeah. And then the Cookbook Nook is not really a pun, but we started going with cooking terms and book terms, so stirring the plot and fudging the books, and so they're fun to come up with.
So thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. This has been so much fun. Just an update on the store for everybody who is watching. We are still closed for browsing, but we are offering curbside pickup, and we're doing online orders for and mail orders. So you can give us a call at 713-524-8597 if you want to order either copy of either of their books or any of their other books as well. We have our website, murderbooks.com. You can order on there. If you check out my staff picks page, there's a link to my cozy corner. I have generally a cozy spinner rack display in the store. We've got some really great cozy events coming up. Tomorrow night, I am interviewing Sarah Rosette and Erica Ruth Neubauer.
Oh, nice.
Then next Wednesday, we are talking with Ellie Alexander about her newest book. And then in July, I think July 21st, we're doing an event with S.C. Perkins, who has her second book out, Carolyn Haynes, and Miranda James, who is the former manager at Murder by the Book, is going to be moderating that. So lots of cozy goodness coming up. Daryl and Abby, thank you again so much for joining us.
Thank you.
It was so much fun. I really enjoyed myself tonight, and we will talk to you soon.
Thank you so much, John. Abby, nice to see you.
Nice to see you.